Welcome to the Menopause and Cancer podcast, where we speak with cancer patients, survivors, and incredible experts in their fields to help us find solutions to our symptoms and ideas to improve our health. I'm your host, Danny Binnington, and I'm here with my weights in my hands because today we want to talk about how to start strength training after cancer, safe and effective workouts. We want to talk about what does strength training do for you? How do you start? How do you make it safe? And if you've been strength training for a while, stick around. There is so many good tips and nuggets of advice in this episode. I'm joined by Sarah Newman. She's a cancer survivor herself, and she has turned her frustration, but also her passion into becoming a trained exercise specialist for cancer survivors. We'll talk about how to begin strength training, what exercises are safe, how to rebuild muscle, and why is this so important? Most importantly, I ask Sarah, what happens if we've lost our mojo, if we don't know where to start, if we kind of have lots of joint aches, and if we're really tired, if fatigue really hits us? What are your 5 top tips on 5 top exercises we could all start to implement into our days? And Sarah demonstrates those as well. So if you are not watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this, I can encourage you, please go and check out our YouTube channel. I put the link below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you can see Sarah's slideshow presentation, but also watch her demonstrate the exercises so you can be doing them at home, but also be safe whilst you're exercising. I'm also going to ask Sarah, is it better to pick up lighter weights and do more repetitions? Or I've got really big weights here in the background. Is it better to lift heavy? And what's the difference? So come into this conversation. I hope it's really going to inspire you to get started. And further in the show notes, there are lots and lots of links of how you can get started with Sarah today. Thank you, everyone, for joining a Menopause and Cancer workshop. This one is long overdue. What's taken us so long, Sarah?
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? Life.
That's it. Sarah was on the podcast before with Professor Anna Campbell when we spoke about the benefits of exercise. And Sarah, you are a cancer survivor and you're also a trained cancer exercise specialist. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Sarah, and at age 34 in 2018, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and went through a lot of different treatments quite quickly together, which made me feel absolutely terrible very fast. And I was always a big exerciser. I love to be outside. I love to walk. I did quite a bit of running in my time, and I kind of dabbled a little bit in strength training in the gym, but it probably wasn't my favorite thing. I liked to run. And then when I got my cancer diagnosis, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know whether I could exercise. I didn't know what was safe. And so I kind of found myself in this postnatal class because I'd had a gynecological cancer. Probably wasn't the right place for me at that time, but it felt like somebody knew a little bit about what I'd been through and how I had to look after my pelvic floor and all those kind of things. But they didn't understand what the treatment I'd had and how that might have impacted my body. And so I looked into whether there was someone that existed who could help people with cancer exercise again safely. And there were a few people around, but I did understand that I could become that person. And so I actually spent my sick leave training and studying to be a personal trainer with the intention always to support people who were going through cancer and beyond that as well, coming out the other end. And so I did that. I became a PT and I started working with clients, and then I went on to do my cancer specific training. I also am a specialist in breast cancer as well, and having had my own gynae cancer, know quite a lot about the rehab in that type of cancer too. But that's not to say that I don't work in a range of different cancers in both men and women. So it was a long story short. Get Me Back was born in May 2019 because that's what exercise did for me. Because during my recovery, I needed the movement and the kind of connection with my body, having lost so much trust in what had happened through my diagnosis and through my treatment. And by the end, I just didn't recognize who I'd become. And movement and exercise just became a really key way of me to reconnect with myself. And 7 years this year on, I'm probably the fittest and strongest I've ever been because it's become such a huge part of my life.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. It comes at a very good time where I'm probably feeling the laziest and the least motivated in many years myself. So I really couldn't wait to talk to you today because moving is a very personal thing and exercising is very personal, and a lot changes with a cancer diagnosis and then the menopause symptoms muddling on top of that. And so no way of moving ever suits everyone, but we do know a lot about the benefits of strength training and safe strength training. And that's what I really want to talk to you about, because I keep thinking maybe I could just do 10 minutes of that and it'll just make me feel more energized. And I've got lots of questions for you. I would love to know from everyone who is here, um, how you are, but I'm going to launch a little poll. And in the poll, I'm going to ask you, so I've launched it. So if you wouldn't mind just filling it in, were you able to move through your treatment? Because this is the first time when a lot changes. You know, in an ideal world, we would all say, I've always been like a Duracell bunny and exercising 5 times a week, but that's not the reality. So often we get to having a cancer diagnosis and people think I'm going to start exercising or I have to stop exercising, and what happens there? So we're curious, were you able to move through your treatment? What are your barriers to moving more? Is our second question for you today. Do you think you should move more? And what is stopping you? Is it like my own experience at the moment that you've lost your mojo and you just can't fit it in? And our third question is, did your medical team give you advice on exercise?
Mm.
Yes, no, or I had to ask. And I'll leave you, I'll leave you with this poll for a few minutes and then I'll end it in a moment. Sarah, when you then found other people out there who were successfully training cancer survivors, was this suddenly a whole new world that opened for you and you realized there is guidance? There are actually a lot of studies out there to tell us about the benefit.
Well, in terms of the people themselves, they existed, but they weren't really in the UK. There were lots of people in Australia, in the States, but I couldn't really come across that many people round where I was. And I did find a training provider who offered the type of training that I wanted to take. And then in that, it was talking a lot about the studies and the research behind it. And obviously, every week I update my knowledge on what's going on. And the research just in the last 5 to 6 years since I've been doing this job is unbelievable. So there's
Mm,
so much more evidence in different areas, in different types of side effects, in different types of cancer and treatments, in primary cancers, in metastatic cancers. So it's a really interesting area that has proper scientific evidence behind it, to support people to move more in all
mm.
different scenarios in most cases.
And before I'll ask you to turn on your slide presentation that you've kindly prepared for us today. What was your experience with menopause? We've known each other for a few years and it's always been fantastic to meet you in person. What was your experience with menopause like?
So when I was initially treated, I was given Zoladex to try and shut down my ovaries while I was having my radiotherapy. And they gave me a single month dose and then a 3 month dose, which kind of took a good 2 years to wear off, shall we say. My ovaries were transposed up behind my liver and spleen, so they were touched and altered. So my menopause was very extreme to begin with, so with Zoladex. And then eventually I actually came out of menopause. My ovaries were starting to work again. And then I'm now gradually, over the last 18 months, I've been going back through it naturally. So
Okay.
I am able to take hormone replacement therapy because of my cancer not being hormone driven. But I am 40, so it is a very early menopause for me.
Mm. And although you have had, as we always say, we've all had great medical advice and you're able to access perhaps hormone replacement therapy, it's never smooth, is it? Because we
No.
always talk about how so many symptoms come back in and what else can we do? And I feel like whatever treatment options are out there, it's a tough one, isn't it, after cancer treatment?
But we're very complex cases. I've paid to have private medical support because my general practice doctor kind of doesn't really is a bit baffled perhaps by my case. My ovaries aren't attached to my uterus and they've been moved and I've had treatment and I'm younger and I've had a radiated uterus. So it's kind of all the questions of should she have this, shouldn't she have this? My oncologist is probably not educated enough in the use of hormone replacement therapy. So she's not best placed to do it either. And so, yeah, I've sought private advice to help me and luckily found somebody who's been able to support me.
So it's the classic case of someone falling into what we call the menopause void, right?
Yeah,
And without your fierce self-advocacy, you probably wouldn't be able to access the treatments you would right now. And we always say people shouldn't have to self-advocate because many people
yeah,
can't for themselves. But one thing that is so beautiful about strength training, it makes you feel a little bit stronger, not just in your arms or in your legs, but when I've had phases of strength training, I just felt a bit more like, I can do this. I'm
yeah.
strong. And I had that feeling sort of muddled its way into my everyday. And that's perhaps what I really also want to talk to you about is the physical impact, but also the benefit on our menopause symptoms. But then also, what does it do to us psychologically? Because often it's that what's been lost, isn't it, after a cancer diagnosis, and we're fearful and we might be very worried about the future. And so that strength through strength training would be a lovely thing to tap back into. I'm going to end the poll. Shall we just see what everyone has said? And I'm going to share the results with you all. So that's great. 37% moved through their cancer treatment and 58% walked, but no more. But that's great because
Yeah,
they
that's still
walk.
really good.
I'm going to just look at the details of all of those. Um, that said, what barriers are you facing to move more? People are saying joint muscle pain, worried I will injure myself,
Mhm.
stiffness and pain from hormone treatment, time now. You're heading back to work. So, okay, that's another adjustment. How am I going to cope returning back to work? More joint and muscle pain, more injuries, more joint pain, fatigue and lack and range of movement. Um, Sore and weak pecs and chest after her mastectomy. So this is, I suppose, breast cancer, exhaustion, muscle soreness that doesn't improve, more joint and muscle pain. So lots of common symptoms. Post-surgery recovery from treatment took a while to get back to exercising. This person wasn't sure what to do to help with side effects after surgery. Lack of energy, a bit like me at the moment. Concern about doing harm, I really understand. Surgical scars, fatigue, lots and lots more lovely comments, so many comments. One person is saying, chemo really floored me. I have never slept so much. Would only be able to come down the stairs on my bum in the first week after chemo. So real fatigue. Other people, again, no barriers apart from tiredness, fatigue, low mood, and joint pain.
Mm. Yeah.
There are lots more, and we can go into those. Um, and then, interestingly enough, did your medical team give you advice on exercise? 72% said no, and 22% said I had to ask. But hooray for the 11%.
Yeah. Hooray. I
Hooray
mean,
for the
it's
11%.
definitely changing. We're seeing a lot more conversations about exercise happening, but I think what's lacking now is the detail, is the how. And I really hope that that's what I can give you this evening is a little bit more guidance on specifics so that you feel a bit more confident going forward and moving, particularly from a strength point of view.
Perfect. Are you happy to get into it and share your slides? I'm going to
Yes.
turn my camera off for the time being.
Okay, so we're going to talk about strength training. I hope I'm going to cover everything that you want to know about it. Obviously, we've got tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards as well. So we've talked a little bit about how exercise got me back from cancer, and I am very much like whoever has mentioned coming down the stairs on your bottom. I was floored by my chemo and I had radio at the same time. So I was a mess of a person when I finished my treatment. So I do understand how bad it feels. What I wanted to cover today is around the kind of benefits of strength training, particularly because this is where I think people find it a little bit more scary when they come back to exercise after treatment, or when they come into trying exercising through their treatment. But also how strength training can support you through the menopause, which some people are going into earlier than they had expected to as a result of their treatment. So some of the best exercises that you can use to help regain this strength, because we do lose a fair amount of muscle mass through our treatment, particularly through chemotherapy. And that is caused by the treatments themselves, but also the fact that we are generally a little bit more sedentary during that time, which is understandable. I also wanted to run through some adaptations that us as exercise professionals use as more precautionary measures for things like lymphedema after cancer treatment. I want to demonstrate, if you've got time, some of the key strength training principles. So some of the key moves that we use in a strength training workout, and how you can then safely progress them and choose the right weight for you. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So you are probably all here because you know most of this, but it can feel a little bit counterintuitive to think that exercise is going to overcome something like fatigue. But actually, that is the area that it has the most amount of research to support alleviation of cancer-related fatigue. We're going to talk a little bit more about how afterwards. But generally, exercise has been shown to reduce some of your treatment side effects. So during treatment, things like nausea, fatigue itself, but also from a mental point of view, trying to alleviate anxiety and, that kind of fear that we experience during our treatment and after as well. It will maintain, if you're having your treatment, some of that muscle mass that might be lost as a result of treatment, but also help you rebuild your strength afterwards. And strength training actually increases your flexibility. It improves your balance, and that can also be another thing that you can lose during your treatment. But generally, strength training is there to improve your physical functioning. It sounds a little bit like you're kind of talking about things, in the future. But actually, if you've seen one of the social media posts around, I'm not training for a bikini body, I'm training for my 90-year-old granny self. This is going to help you be stronger for longer, longevity of your body and looking after it. And in that is the menopause, because we know the effects of menopause on our bones and our joints, and strength training, so adding load through those bones and joints, can improve your bone density and support your joint strength. But also strength training can increase your energy levels. So strength training kind of creates that energy throughout the day, that long-lasting energy. Sometimes if you go on a run, you feel energized straight after, and then you feel exhausted. But actually, from a strength point of view, those muscles are kind of working for longer through the day, so you really get a nice burst of energy. But also, generally, we know that being more active reduces your risk of recurrence. And that can form many different types of exercise. But if strength training is in that, I think that's particularly beneficial. So how much exercise should you be doing? And the word should, don't like using it because people are different. You and I are very different in terms of what our dose is right. So if you see exercise a bit like a medicine, you want to create a dose that's right for you. So I can tell you that you need to do 150 or more minutes of cardiovascular exercise a week, but that might make you feel so wiped out that it's not benefiting you. So what we want to do is create some kind of cardiovascular movement through your week. So that's walking, it might be riding a bike gently, it might be going swimming, something that raises your heart rate and makes you breathe a little bit deeper and faster. And that tends to be something you can fit into your day. So you might be walking to the station or walking the dog or taking children to school, things like that, where you can fit it around your routine. So it tends to be a bit of an easier thing to get to tick off your list. Some kind of flexibility and mobility through a stretch-based movement. Now, if you've had breast cancer, for example, you tend to be given exercises to help improve your range of motion. So that's that type of flexibility and mobility. But you might have also found yourself feeling a bit stiffer after treatment and as you go through menopause. So generally stretching through warm-up, cool down is going to become particularly important to help support you. And this is where people find it a little bit more challenging when they're told to do 2 or more strength training sessions a week, but they don't tell you how long to do it for, and they don't tell you what exercise to do. So this is where I'm hoping I can give you a bit more guidance and thinking about how you might be able to fit this for you individually. So Danny talked about her motivation being low. If I told her, oh, we'll go and do an hour-long strength workout, probably not so motivational because she's thinking that's an hour, that's a long time. But what if I said to her, okay, Danny, every time you go and make a cup of tea today, I want you to do 10 squats. And then every time you go and get something out of the cupboard, I want you to do 5 wall presses against the cupboard. And that feels much more achievable. So you've got to remember that you can fit this around your day and you've got to make it work for you so that you keep it up. But actually, what is strength training? How is it different from cardiovascular training? So a lot of us wear these fitness watches, and when we go and do strength training, people say, but my heart rate didn't get up really high. Generally, because a strength-based exercise is much slower. It's a form of exercise that uses resistance. So that might be a weight, it might be your body weight, it might be a resistance band, but it's all there to kind of strengthen and build muscle mass. So it's putting load through muscles so that the mass of the muscle increases. When we strength train, our muscle fibers almost break and then they rebuild stronger and sometimes larger to help us build that muscle mass. It also will help us increase endurance and our body strength and bone density, really key things post-cancer, post-menopause. And these exercises might include lifting weight, but that can be anything from a water bottle to a barbell. It could be resistance bands or those pulley machines at the gym, or it could be using your body weight. So all of these things are quite simple exercises all the way up to slightly more serious lifting. And it is particularly important for us, especially during and after menopause, for all the reasons around our bone density. So reducing our risk of osteoporosis, but also trying to strengthen the muscles around our joints so that we reduce some of that pain that we might be feeling and stiffness, keeping everything moving. But also that physical functioning that we want to be able to do all of those things that we do every day for longer. So I also promised that I would tell you things that we are made aware of for people who've had a cancer diagnosis. So these are the things that you might want to be aware of before you start your training. We always have to have sign-off from your oncology team, which makes it difficult if it's somebody who hasn't necessarily advised exercise or is misinformed about exercise. So if that ever happens to you, please do come and talk to me and I can give you research to support what you're planning to do. It's also really important that your mobility, somebody mentioned they were a bit limited on their mobility. It's key that we try and get as much mobility back in our limbs. It might be your legs, it might be your shoulders, wherever you've had your treatment, before you then add more load through that joint or through that limb. So if you're struggling with your mobility, go back and see a physiotherapist or come and talk to me a little bit more about it, and let's work out how we can improve that mobility. So religiously doing all of your exercises that you're given pre and post surgery, pre and post radiotherapy. And then once you feel you've got enough range of motion to get into the positions that you want to for your strength training, you need to start light and progress slowly. One of the points that I mentioned below is being careful about competing with your pre-cancer self. So there'll be people here tonight who have done strength training before, who know what they used to lift above their head or deadlift, for example. We have to kind of park that for a little bit and make sure our body is happy with a weight before we move on to the next one. Because it's been through a lot and we have to give it that credit that it's looking after us, it's repairing us. And if we're starting to add too much weight too soon, that's when we start to get injured or our body starts to panic a little bit. One caution that we take is around lymphedema, and that becomes a risk if you've had surgery or radiation to your lymph nodes. So everyone has a different number of lymph nodes. If you've only had 3 removed, I don't know in terms of a ratio how many that is to what's left, but it does put you at a slightly higher risk of lymphedema. If you've had a full clearance, your risk is even higher, so we need to take extra precautions. And that is not to say you're going to get lymphedema. It's not kind of, if you do this, you will get it. It's a risk reducing strategy, and it's exercises that we recommend that you kind of avoid or build back up to just to reduce the risk of developing lymphedema. Always give yourself a rest day after your strength training, because remember, this is kind of a medicine and we want to see how you respond to it. And we also want to make sure your body recovers from it. So give yourself a rest day, see how your body feels, kind of tune in with what you've done. Do you feel a bit of stiffness? That's quite natural. Are you feeling any pain? Not so natural. Are you feeling any heaviness or difference in areas of your body? And make sure you're recording that and you're keeping in tune with your body so that you can feel if anything changes. Make it fun. Don't come to a class that you hate because you won't go to it again. So find something that you really enjoy, take a friend with you to make it funner. But it's really important that you enjoy the movement and the exercise that you're doing and that you're getting the environment right. So when we go through menopause, obviously we do have hot flushes. I find that being outside has a much more beneficial impact on the way that I exercise, because when I get too hot, I find I almost panic. So actually being outside, I've got that constant level at the moment of coolness, and that really helps me. Some people prefer being in the gym because you've got air conditioning, it's a bit more focused, or you want to be on your own at home because you don't want to go into a gym or a group setting. So think about the environment that works for you, because that is going to encourage you to work harder and continue doing it. So I mentioned lymphedema, and this is an area really where I think lots of people have some fear. And I don't want you to be fearful about it, because the research does suggest that strength training is beneficial to those at risk, so those with those lymph nodes who perhaps have been surgically removed or radiated, and those with existing lymphedema. So if you have had your lymph nodes removed or radiated, you are at that higher risk. But it's a varied risk, and it's uncertain whether or not you would get lymphedema. But we mitigate that risk by doing 3 things mainly. We avoid long static holds. So that's something where you're holding, like heavy shopping for a long time, planking for a long time, or we build back up to it. So we build up gradually with weight, or we build up gradually with those longer holds. But you always wear a compression garment if you have existing lymphedema. So that's what is recommended, that you wear your compression garment to support your limb or your affected area during exercise. And for those at risk, we really consider how they use long holds like planks and how you gradually build your weight back up. Again, tuning into your body, like I mentioned, with that rest day to see how everything feels, so that you can have a think about the signs and symptoms of lymphedema. So swelling, a feeling of heaviness, tightness, changes to your range of motion. So it's not black and white lymphedema. It doesn't just develop overnight. There are signs that you can be aware of in between, and the earlier you catch it, the easier it is to treat. I hope that has helped reassure a few people. So this one's helpful for you, Demi. Building strength training into your routine. And this is one that I do talk to a lot of people about, because it is hard to motivate yourself when you're feeling so rubbish. And I do understand that. And so the only way that I've managed to do it is through a number of different ways, but I will try and share as much as I know. Finding something that you enjoy is really important. I put a calendar diary invite in my diary every time I plan to go to the gym. And so that time is blocked out in my diary and I don't book anything around it because I see it as like a medical appointment that I have to go to. I also consider sometimes setting a bit of a goal that is achievable. So I don't know, I want to complete a 5K in 4 months' time. So I could work on building up my running, or I want to be able to do a certain exercise with a certain amount of weight. And I think that's achievable, but that can be motivational. For some people, they don't like a goal, they just like to exercise, and that's totally okay too. But you can then consider it as like, I'm going to exercise twice a week. So that's your goal. By February, sorry, it's just gone February. By May, I will be exercising twice a week. It's also really important that you create the right dose for benefit. And as I said at the beginning, that might be different for Danny as it is for me. And the dose will be right if you're finding benefit from the exercise. So if you're finding that it's relieving your joint pain, that it is giving you some more energy and you're feeling less fatigued. If you're feeling that you're not getting to that point, I would suggest moving backwards until you find that point and then work back up. And that is frustrating. I do understand that, but it will come back gradually and quite quickly if you find your dose, your perfect dose, and then work up from that. And then, as I mentioned in our previous slide, finding the right time and the format and the setting that suits you. So you might be a morning person and you might have more energy in the morning, particularly during treatment time. Choose that to exercise. Don't wait till the evening because you will not do it by that point. It might be that you can't do a half an hour workout all at once and you want to break it up into 10-minute bursts through your day. And that's totally fine too. But know where your limits are and know what suits you and try to fit it around your own personal routine. And remember that progress isn't always linear. In fact, it's probably round in circles and upside down and all around the place, but you will be making progress. That underlying line will slowly be moving upward. So don't give up if you don't do it a day or a week. Just restart as many times as you need to, and you will start to see the benefits. And equipment is always a kind of barrier. So what I've tried to do here is cover as many barriers as possible and just reassure you that equipment doesn't need to be complicated when you're strength training. You can start with your body weight, or you can buy some really inexpensive resistance bands from Amazon or your local sports shop. If you don't have dumbbells, you can use bean tins or water bottles filled with sand or with water. And then as you start to progress, you can invest in some weights. You can get adjustable weights that you can build up, dumbbells, kettlebells, a barbell, whatever you feel comfortable. Lots of people like doing things like body pump at the gym. That's a nice way to build up weight. Or you've got resistance machines in the gym if you're using a gym, or thicker resistance bands that go up to some pretty serious weight as you're progressing. So really simple things that you can buy from the internet or from local shops. And this is kind of where we go into what type of exercises you should be doing. And these are exercises that you probably do every day, and they will support you to do those things every day better. So they're all based on functional movement. I always consider things like posture and areas of weakness after your treatment, and try and build those into my strength routine as well. So for example, posture can be impacted by more sedentary time. So when you're sitting down for longer, you've got a really big muscle or muscles in your bottom, and they are very essential at supporting your lower back, supporting the movement through your legs, the way you hold yourself. And when we sit down for longer, they can be one of the first muscle groups to kind of deactivate, shall we say. So just that brain to muscle pathway needs to be reactivated. We need to get those glutes working a little bit better. Also, if you're becoming a bit protective of a certain area, if you've had abdominal surgery, chest surgery, you might feel that you're getting a bit rounded in your shoulders. So thinking about exercises that are going to help open you up and correct some of those imbalances through those two muscle groups. And I'm quite happy to go through and show you some of the 5 key strength training principles that I teach, if that's helpful for everyone today.
Hello, I love all of this. Thank you so much. Well, I hope you didn't miss me because I just quickly ran away from my desk to bring you, before you show us, can I show you something where I'm getting very confused? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so nice 1 kg weights
Yeah.
or beautiful 5 kg weights. Okay, so I've got the best of intentions, as you can see. What is more beneficial, and where I never really understand true when people talk about weight training and strength training, is it better for me to use smaller weights and do many, many more repetitions? Because with these 1 kgs, I can do lots of things, probably for 15, 20, 25 times until I sort of get then tired and fatigued in my arms. Whereas with these beasts, can you hear it in my voice? I can probably only do 1, 2, or 3, and then I'm done. And I do not know what is better. Lots of repetitions, little weights, or should I just pump it out on bigger weights?
So it depends what you're trying to achieve as well.
Okay.
And I would say what I tend to focus on with people who are coming back from a cancer diagnosis is to work predominantly first off on more repetitions with a lighter weight so that we can see how your body responds, particularly for those that have had lymph nodes removed, to see how your body responds to that weight, to that exercise, before you then start to add weights in.
Okay.
So when you start with a new weight, I would take your repetitions right back. So say you were doing 15 repetitions here with your 1 kilo, and then you bought a 2 kilogram weight. I'd say, okay, start on 10 repetitions and see how that feels. And then you might be doing 10 repetitions for 2 weeks. And that might start to feel a bit easier. So you think, actually, I'm not ready for 3, but I'm now going to do 12 repetitions with my 2 kilogram weights. And then you think, actually, think I'm now ready for 3 because I've done 2 sets of 12. So I'm going to go for 8 repetitions with my 3 kilograms. And that's your progression. So
Okay.
if you decrease your repetitions, you can add weight.
Okay.
But as you start to progress on that weight, you're going to add repetitions in.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
your
that
5 kilogram between your 1 and 5 is a massive jump.
yeah.
So I would go in increments of 1.5 kilos, and just slowly kind of take the repetitions down, take the weight up, then
Mm,
add repetitions in with that new weight until you feel ready to start another kilo up. Take the
mm,
repetitions back down again, work back up, and then come down and then keep working back up. So
mm.
that's how you work through progressions, is you either add weight or you add repetitions or you make your exercise slower. So if you're doing kind of 12 of those at that speed, if you slowed it down, your muscles would be under tension for longer, so it would feel harder.
Okay.
So you can change the tempo of an exercise to make it more difficult.
Because the appeal from what you have said is the long-lasting energy. I quite like that idea because I do get quite tired after a jog or after a run, um and I feel like I have that high, but it doesn't maybe stay with me. So the appeal is to get that long-lasting energy through strength exercise, but also I don't want to be there forever because it's not necessarily something that really makes me feel very joyful, but I want to get the job done, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
exactly. And shorter workout, you might want to be using a slightly heavier weight if you're only doing, 3 or 4 repetitions of an exercise.
Mm,
But what my cautions are around people, particularly who've had breast cancer and lymph nodes removed, is the weight progression needs to be steady. So if
okay.
you suddenly pick up a 5 kilogram weight and lift it above your head and you've never done that before, I would say that's a bit too heavy too soon. I would take
Mm,
you back to around 2 kilograms, make sure you're happy doing 12 repetitions, and then work you back up to 5.
mm. So if we think of everyone who's with us today, we have lots of joint muscle pains, of body pains, but also lots of people who feel the fatigue. So probably many people aren't going to do a 45-minute workout. If we had 5 exercises that you could show us, would you talk us through a few of those exercises showing us, and then some key considerations, especially if people have joint aches,
Yeah.
muscle pain, and maybe we're tired, so we might only do 3 or 4 or 5 maximum, but to reap the benefit of those.
Yeah. I can stand up now and I can show you, I'll show you 5 different strength training principles, but I'll show you easier versions and I'll show you harder versions so you can progress up and down accordingly. There are 5 basic principles that I teach. I mean, there are plenty more, but these ones hopefully will give you an idea of the kind of modifications that we can make to target different muscles. And I'm going to start with a squat. So that's our first exercise. And we use that every single day to get in and out of a chair. So if you imagine I'm sitting down, I'm going to reach forward, so transfer my weight over my ankles and my legs, and then I'm going to come up to standing. Then I'm going to push my hips back and sit back into the chair. So in its simplest form, a squat is a sit to stand. So if you're just getting started and you've got issues with your knees and you want to start in the chair, that is the best way to kind of build that initial level of strength. So that's your first step of that exercise. If that starts to feel easier, you can just come down and just hover above your seat. So you're not all the way in it, and then you can come all the way back up to standing. So things to look out for in your legs is that knees aren't coming in. We're tracking with nice parallel legs that are coming over your feet. So once that hover and stand becomes a bit easier, you're just going to come down to the level of your chair and then stand all the way back up again. And when you feel confident and safe without the chair, you can take it away. So your squat becomes a body weight squat. We sit back, our hips go back, so as if our chair is behind us, and then we stand all the way back up again. So my feet are nice and flat on the ground, heels aren't lifting, I'm not too far forward, my hips are going back into my invisible chair, and then I'm standing back up again. So this is a really good movement, works a lot of your leg muscles, it works your bottom, your core is having to work too to help keep you stable as you come down and up. And then you start to load it. So this is how strength training works. You start and you progress up through those steps, and then you start to add weight. So you might have some dumbbells, you might rest those on your shoulders, and then you come into your squat with some extra load. So there's going to be more load going through those joints, they're going to be getting stronger, and you are sitting down and standing back up. And as you progress, you add to that load. And we do need to keep progressing because it's what keeps our muscles growing and getting stronger and supporting that bone density that we talked about. So it is important when an exercise starts to feel easy that you progress that weight a little bit more. So that might be in the form of having a barbell or using kettlebells, however you want to do it. So that's a really simple exercise that you can modify using different position of your legs to target different areas of your leg muscles. So this is a sumo squat, and I'm going a little bit more for the inner thigh with wider legs in kind of second position, or I might go really narrow, have my weights in my hand, do a suitcase squat, where I'm targeting a little bit more of the fronts of my legs, my ankle mobility. So there's lots of different ways that you can modify that very simple exercise. So that's number 1. Number 2, which I would recommend those if you have a bad back or you have any issues in your spine, that you definitely seek some support to make sure this one is right, is a hinge-based movement. So you saw with my squat, I was bending my knees, I was sitting down, standing up. Here is a movement that we use every day to pick something off the ground. I'm not leaning forward, I'm actually pushing my hips back, letting my knees bend and keeping my back really flat. So this is a hinge-based movement using a lot of the rear chain of movement through my hamstrings at the back of my legs, my bottom, a little bit of my lower back, but I'm not putting all my force through there. So I'm coming down, pushing my hips back and standing back up. This is a great one to strengthen your hamstrings. It's a great one to use your core because you're contracting and then extending as you're hinging forward. And you can load this one up with weight in front, using a barbell, using your dumbbells, however you want to do it. But that hinge-based movement is a really good one to build a lot of full body strength, particularly in this kind of core area here. And if you're unsure if you're getting it right, use a mirror to check that your back is flat, your shoulders aren't rounded, because that's when your spine starts to take over. Or use a wall behind you and push your bottom back into the wall, because that will show you that your hips are going backwards and you're not leaning too far forward. So that is a hinge-based movement, which we call a deadlift. It can be done with 2 legs, it can be done with split legs, and it can be done with a single leg. But it is all based on a hinge from the hips, hinging forwards and backwards. Okay, that's number 2. I'm going through these very quickly. Our next 2 are linked. They are push and pull. We use these 2 movements every single day. We might pull open a door, push a door close. So as they say on the tin, anything where you're pulling weight or resistance towards you is a pull-based move. Anything where you're pushing weight or resistance away from you is a push-based move. And there are lots to choose from here. So I've chosen a couple of push-based moves, and they are an overhead press. So you might use bean tins for this, or just use your body weight if you're just getting started. And we take the weights up above the head, keeping the biceps by the ears, and then bring them back down again. Up and down. So I'm pushing, my effort is getting that weight up above my head, which makes it a push-based exercise. Another push-based exercise you can use is something like a wall press or a press up. That's a push, because you're lowering yourself in and then you're pushing your body weight away. So you're using your pectoral muscles here. So this is a good one if you've had any surgery to the chest and you've got all clear and you're kind of starting to recover and you don't want to go back into that full press up. You can use a wall and an angle to lower yourself in and push yourself away. You're also having to use your core muscles to keep yourself nice and strong and straight. So that's push. Our pull-based moves tend to be for the slightly opposing muscles in our upper back when we're using them for our upper body. And they're when we're going to be pulling our weight towards us. So they're things like a row, which you can do standing up, or you can do hinged forward, where you're pulling the weight in towards you and you're using your upper back to pull that weight away and into the body. So that's a bent over row, which is a pull-based move. And as I mentioned, for posture, strengthening some of those upper back muscles is really, really handy to help you stand stronger and in a better postural position. And we can also use our resistance bands for any of these exercises. One that I like particularly, which replicates something that happens in the gym, is a lat pull down. So we take the band up above our head, can have a look at it, and then we pull it wide and down to our chest. So we're using a lot of those big upper back muscles to pull it wide and down. So again, another pull-based exercise, and also very good for the posture. Just a simple resistance band can help you create that one. And then just adding thickness, which is what adds progression and weight or resistance to that exercise. So anything from light resistance to heavier resistance, you can take that at your own level. And there is one more, and I will go very quickly. Sorry. So we are going to finish with a lunge-based move, which is some people find quite fearful because of their knees and because of their joint pain. And I want to show you a few modifications that you can make to a lunge, which in theory is a step up the stairs. So this is a lunge. We've got 90 degrees in the back leg, 90 degrees in the front leg, and we're coming back up to standing. If this feels too much, use the back of a chair, slide a leg back, keep all your weight on this front leg. So I'm just tapping my leg back and then come all the way back in. So repeat that to build up the strength in the front leg. And then slowly start to feel that little bit of a bend, because my weight is mainly through this front leg. And then coming back up again, back and up. And build yourself up to the step back, the lower, the raise, and the step in. It doesn't have to be done in one quick flow through. You can break it down, but keep your weight forward over that front leg. Lots of people try and put too much weight through the back leg, and that's when it becomes quite difficult. So try the slide back first. If that feels okay, start to bend that back knee a little bit more and then lower down a little bit further, but use support if your balance is off. Don't make your life hard. Try and make it as easy and as easy for you so that you can do those exercises. Those are my 5, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you. If I was going to copy those and I would feel confident that I had some weights that I now know are appropriate for me, how often would I repeat those 5 in the week? And how many repetitions am I aiming for? Because we're all different strong, until my muscles are like burning, until they're tingling, or when do I stop?
So I would start with 2 sets of 8. If that feels too easy, I would do 2 sets of 10, 2 sets of 12, and then you can add in another set. So you could go to 3 sets of 10. So it depends how much time you've got. So you might think, okay, I'm waiting for the kettle to boil. Today I'm going to do my squats. So you do 10 squats, you take a little pause, you put your tea bag in, you do another 10 squats, you stir your tea, you take your tea bag out, and then you do your final 10 squats and your tea's ready. So that's your 3 sets of 10 done one day. Next day, I would do a different muscle group. Do your lat pull downs or your rows or something like that, and do exactly the same thing. But spread different exercises across your week or across different times if that's how you want to start. If you're doing a more condensed workout and you want to do multiple exercises within that workout, then I'd say a couple of times a week, that's where you want to start with your 5 moves.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
I quite like it when the instructions are very clear and I know exactly what I have to do. For those that are not as confident to do this themselves at home, or who think, oh, I've had the best intentions to squat while I make my tea, but I'm never going to do it because it's just, it's very hard to implement those micro changes into someone's life as well. How do we access a cancer trained specialist? How can we find you? Where do you teach? And where do some of your colleagues teach as well?
So the cancer and exercise specialist, there is a registry. I don't know how available it is, unfortunately. It's through Can Rehab.
Yeah.
And they have a list of exercise professionals. It's not available publicly. I think you have to request it. I have access to a group of Can Rehab trained professionals on Facebook. So if anyone wants to follow up with me to ask if they've got someone locally. There are quite a few of us now in the UK. We also work for different charities. So I work with Future Dreams charity. I know that there are some professionals working for Overcome and another ovarian cancer action. And there are professionals working for Macmillan and for Maggie Centres across the UK.
If you work at Future Dreams, is this an online class, Sarah?
Mine's online, yeah.
That's brilliant. So
yeah,
easily accessible.
I do a weekly strength class on a Tuesday at midday through Future Dreams. And that is based on all of those different types of movements that I've just demonstrated.
That's perfect. And then you also teach in Kate's app now, don't you? Which I think is a brilliant initiative.
Yeah, so I've created my own community and app. So my membership is like a gym membership, but it's all online, and I do 7 classes a week. So we have strength classes, we have cardio classes, and we have a yoga instructor as well. So that's all through Get Me Back. And
Yeah.
then I've collaborated with Owning Your Menopause, and I offer them a fortnightly class, which is live. And they also host my breast cancer recovery program, which is something I've developed, a video-based program that I've developed to support people who are recovering from breast cancer.
And so, Sarah, say someone is thinking, I'd really want to do this, I want to start, and I quite like the idea of your online programs, but I'm not feeling confident enough. Would it be a good idea to have a one-to-one with you first, maybe, before you then throw people into sort of like the deep end and into a group setting, or is this a possibility?
Yeah, so I'm quite happy to do one-to-ones. I think if people aren't confident, I'm happy to go through the exercises with them. I also offer kind of a welcome chat so I can understand a little bit more about them and advise them. But just in terms of my classes, they're small groups. You know, we're ranging from 10 to 15 people. I can see all of you on the screen. I can advise how you're moving, your form, and support you if you're just looking like you're not quite there and don't feel
Mm,
confident.
mm.
So my levels range. I've got some classes that are a little bit more difficult than others, but I do offer a more gentle strengthening class as well to support everyone at all different levels.
What I love so much about you when we have spoken before, you said sometimes people just need a few months of a little bit of help and then they're ready and they've got the confidence again and they know their form and their posture and then they can go and lift their weights at the gym. And it's just that building the bridge, isn't it? Building
Yeah,
from post recovery when we are not sure what we're doing. We've got all of these issues, joint aches, fatigue, tiredness. Just to build the bridge towards more confidence into moving
exactly.
again. And then you let everyone go and everyone is a free bird and lifts their weights, which is a wonderful thing you're doing. You've done such
Thank you.
incredible stuff and empowered so many people. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. And then, you know, that's the whole concept behind the company is to help you with that bridge in between. You know, if you were an exerciser before, but you've lost all your confidence or you've never done it before and you need to know you're doing it right post-cancer,
Yeah.
is to give you that confidence to get you back to that level that you feel confident then rejoining mainstream exercise.
Yeah, and I've just had a few messages from people that are coming into the chat here, and they're saying the way the way I'm exercising had to change. I used to love to run, for example, and now I can't, and my pelvic floor and all sorts of things are now preventing me from moving the same way. So with strength training, it can be really beneficial because there are so many ways of adding weights,
Yeah.
and hopefully you'll be able to find a way um, that people can move, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I found. I wasn't able to run as much. I've had pelvic radiotherapy. My hips don't like that kind of constant impact of running. And so strength training became my go-to. And actually, I absolutely love it. And as you said, it's that feeling of like feeling strong. And,
Mm.
you know, even though you don't get that cardiovascular, like high heart rate that you do when you go for a run, you still feel like so empowered and so good after it. I think it's a really good thing to do. You just got to find the right type of class, and then you go from there. Find the right person that you enjoy doing it with or being instructed by, and that really helps with motivation.
Well, now I know which weights to use, how to use them. I've got my top 5 exercises, which I think are really cool to have a small number of exercises that I can implement. It's been really great to share. After I turned the recording off, the community started to share. We had a right old laugh about what stops us from exercising, what keeps us going. And it's just amazing to connect to one another. So reach out and join our Facebook group. You know, we're so much more than a podcast audience. You can ask questions in the Facebook group or just sit back and listen and read what others are writing about. Follow us on Instagram. We're a really active community there as well. And of course, go to menopauseandcancer.org. And if you can do anything, then follow the show and also review the show. It's really the only way that we can share this information with all of the other survivors out there. So, after a practical episode, I can't wait to welcome you to next week's show. But from now until I chat to you again, I'm wishing you all the best. And I hope there's a little bit of sun shining for you wherever you are in the world.